Hi everyone, today the plan is to build out a landing page using my resume and the assistance of AI. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to open up Claude Code, we're going to feed it my resume, we're then going to instruct it to build out a landing page using my resume. We're also going to tell it that we want this landing page to include email subscription and that we want to deploy it. But the most important part is before we have Claude Code build out anything, we're going to tell it to give us a plan of how we're going to go about building this landing page. Hi, I'm Samir Marin, a civil engineer turned dev. If you're new to my channel, welcome. These days, I work as a consultant and I spend my time making videos to inspire you to build your next idea, no matter your background. Because these days, with the assistance of AI, I think anyone can become a builder. Quick note on why I'm using Claude Code. It's simply because I find it much easier because I can point directly to a directory in my file system where I could upload the resume file directly, and then Claude Code has access to it, and they can also generate files for me, such as a landing page code. But you could use any AI you want, even with a chat interface like ChatGPT or the Claude Code chat interface directly. It would just be maybe a little more work because now you'd have to upload the resume directly to the chat, and any code it generates, you'd have to copy and paste and put it in a file yourself. But other than that, it would be pretty much the same. I think the important part of this video is more the process we're going to follow to generate the landing page, and not so much the AI we're going to use. Okay, so let's jump in. So I'm in Claude Code, and the first thing I want to do is I want to select a directory where my resume is to be found. So I'm going to go to choose a directory, and I have this directory here, and if I look here, I already have a resume there. So I'm going to choose this directory because it has my resume there. I'm going to open it. Now Claude Code has access to that directory. And now I'm going to type my instructions. Okay, so I typed out, I want to build a landing page using my resume. You can find my resume here. It's in this directory. I want to build out the landing page as well as add email subscription functionality. So the ability for someone to subscribe to my email newsletter or something. And then I told it I also want to deploy the landing page so that it's visible to the world so that somebody can go to some URL and access it. And then I said, can we come up with a plan on how we can go about doing this before writing any code or taking any action? And so that's what we're going to tell Claude Code to start, and let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so Claude Code read my resume, and now it wants to ask me some questions about how I want to go about building out this landing page. So it's asking the tech stack that I want to use. Now, if you don't know, you could totally ask, hey, I'm new, I don't know what I'm doing, what's the easiest approach? Personally, I think the easiest approach right now is just plain HTML because it's more static code and it's a little easier to deploy, so I'm going to go with that for this example. Though, like I said, if you really don't know what's going on, you could always utilize the AI and ask, hey, what's the difference between all these options? I'm very new, what do you think I should go with? In this case, I'm going to click plain HTML, CSS, JS. And it tells you they're lightweight, no build step, easiest to deploy anywhere, good for simple static pages. So let's keep it simple and let's go with that one. Now it's asking me, which email subscription service do you want to use? I don't really know much about this. I sort of recognize MailChimp, but I don't know if I want to use any of these. I'm going to ask it if there's other options. Are there other options? Because I think there was another option I wanted to use, but I forgot the name of it. You can use. Okay, so that didn't work. So I guess you cannot ask it if there are other options there. We'll see what happens in this particular case because I typed something else. It'll probably say I don't recognize what that means, but let's see what happens. For now, it's asking us, where do you want to deploy the landing page? And now it's giving us Vercel, Netlify or GitHub Pages. I would say I'm gonna go with the recommended one for now. It says there's a free hobby tier, automatic deploys from Git, custom domain support. I don't really know which ones of these would be best. I sort of know GitHub Pages because I've used GitHub, but let's just go with this one because it says recommended. And then it's asking what kind of design I want. I'm gonna go with clean and light. And then let's see what happens with that option where we didn't really tell it what email subscription we wanted. It'll probably ask for clarification. So it's asking me what I plan to do with the email. I'm gonna say both. And now it's giving me options based on my choice because I said I potentially want to collect emails and also send newsletters. Once again, MailChimp is an option, Kit is another option, Beehiiv, and FormSpree. I'm gonna go with Beehiiv because I've been wanting to try this out. I've heard about it a lot. And I think there's a full free tier on it available, which says right here. And it's great to plan and grow newsletters, so I'm gonna go with Beehiiv in this case. Okay, now it says it has everything it needs, so it's gonna write up the plan. So let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so it came up with the plan. Let's read it and let's see if we want to modify anything. So build a personal landing page for Samir Marin based on his resume with email subscription using Beehiiv and deploy to Vercel. The goal is a professional, publicly accessible portfolio landing page. Perfect. That is the goal. That is what we want. The stack choice is plain HTML and CSS, which is what we chose. The email subscription will be Beehiiv embedded subscription form. Perfect. And we did tell it we wanted to use Vercel for the deployment. I don't know much about Vercel, to be honest, right now, but we'll learn about it as we go. Design, clean and light, which is what we chose. So white background, dark text, muted accent color, perfect. You can always modify on this later if you don't like it. And it's gonna give me the file structure. So it's gonna give me an index HTML, which is the main page, the styling, and then there's going to be a bit of scripting so that we can scroll and have some animation. And that looks pretty good. It's just giving me a lot of other page sections that it's going to have. So these are the different parts of the page: the about, the skills, the experience, my education, and then the subscribe to the email. Perfect. And a footer. So yeah, that looks good to me for now. We can always ask it to update for us once we see it. And email subscription, it's telling us how it provides a copy and paste embedded snippet, so that's perfect. I will need to create an account, and then I'll need to copy the embedded code. Okay, so we can always ask for more clarification on how to do that when we get to that point, but for a plan, it looks pretty good. And then for the deployment, it's telling us that we'll have a Git repo that connects directly to the Vercel dashboard and enables automatic redeploys on push, which essentially means anytime you update your GitHub repository. And it gives us the steps, which we can ask for clarification later. And then implementation steps. So this is actually telling us what it's gonna implement. This is the actual code. It's gonna create the index HTML file. It'll create the styling, the script for the animations, and then this is the Vercel JSON for the deployment. And then it will add the placeholder for adding the subscription and initialize the Git repo and push. We don't really need to do that right now, so we'll probably tell it that we don't need that at this point, and then connect to the GitHub repo. Oh, so this is just telling us the implementation steps from 1 to 2, what all it's going to do. So let's see. And it's telling us how we can verify it. So basically, it just wants us to approve, and it'll get working. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna approve, but I'm gonna say before we do any of the steps involved in deployment, I just wanna see it built locally, and then I'll approve the remaining steps. So that's what I'm gonna say. Okay, this sounds great, but before any of the deploy steps and connecting any email subscription, I want to have a local version I can look at. So let's do that first, and then we can move on to the next steps. So basically I just told it, this sounds great, but I just want to see a local version before we do any sort of deployment or email subscription stuff. Once we have a local version we can look at, we can move on to the next steps. And then let's see what it says. Okay, so now it's giving us the plan for building out the local version first. So let's read that quickly. Front-end HTML, CSS, email, yep. File structure, looks great. The page section is basically what we read last time. Email subscription, yep. Deployment is, yep. And implementation steps. So let's approve. Let's start coding the local version. So I'm gonna say, let's start coding the local version. Here we go. So it should start generating code, something we can verify locally before we move to the next steps. Okay, so it's basically now asking for permissions to write the index.html file, which is one of the files it described that it would generate for building out a landing page. So I like to do it one at a time, but you can also say always allow during the session, but I just say allow once. So generate that file, and it's telling us where it's going to generate it. It's in that directory we chose. Okay, now it wants to create the styles CSS file. This is the styling, so it's asking for permissions to generate this file, and I'm gonna approve it with allow once. Okay, and now it wants to write the script.js file, which is just some simple JavaScript. And this is for the animation it talked about. So I'm also going to approve this with allow once. Okay, perfect. Now that it's done, it's telling us all three files are created. Here's what's been built. So it describes what to build: the index.html, which is the full page structure, the style CSS, which is the styling, and then the script JavaScript file, which is for the animation. And it tells us how we can actually validate this landing page locally to see if we like it. And then once we've had a look, and if we're happy with it, we can move on to the next steps, which is setting up the Beehiiv for the email subscription and then deploying it. So let's first validate it and see if we like how it looks locally. So we just need to go to this file, to the file system, and open up this file. So let's do that. So you can open up the directory and then just click on the index.html. Okay, so open the landing page locally. You can see it's just referencing the file system on the directory we pointed to, and here's how it looks. So hello, I'm Samir Marin, infrastructure engineer, experienced engineer, skilled at developing automation tools and backend services with experience in AWS architecture, infrastructure as code, and system administration. Perfect. It has a click to view the resume, and it's got an about me section, the technical skills section, and the experience, and it's looking pretty good. And then here's where the subscribe button is going to be, and here is where the email subscription is going to be. But this won't work right now because we haven't actually added the Beehiiv stuff, so it's just a placeholder. But you know, overall it looks pretty good. Each one can be clicked on. Contact, Stay in touch takes us down here. You know, overall, for something that was built in a matter of 10 minutes or so, is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm gonna go back to Claude Code and we're gonna move on to the next steps. Okay, so the next two steps is setting a Beehiiv so we can replace the placeholder for the email subscription with the Beehiiv one, and then we want to deploy it. So first up, the Beehiiv. Okay, so I will go and tell Claude Code, ready to move on to the next step. Let's set up Beehiiv and replace the placeholder. What do I need to do? So ready to move on to the next step. Let's set up Beehiiv and replace the placeholder. What do I need to do? And let's see. Okay, so here are the steps. It's telling me that there's no browser connection to Claude Code, which is not a problem because it'll just walk me through it. So I guess there's a way, I haven't actually done this myself, to let Claude Code open up the browser, but we're just gonna follow the steps that Claude Code gives us as opposed to letting it open up the browser for us. So basically we wanna go to Beehiiv, sign up, and we wanna create a publication, can be Samir's newsletter, and then that's about it. So we're gonna do that. And then once we've done that, we want to go to publication details and get a subscription form so we can embed. And it kind of gives us the instructions to do that. And then it tells us that we want to copy the full embedded code. And once you have it, I could just paste it directly in the chat and Claude Code will add it to the indexed HTML for us. So let's do that. Let's head over to beehiiv.com. So we'll go to Beehiiv and so we'll sign up. Okay, so once you've signed up, it's completely free. Choose the free option. You don't need anything else. It will probably get you to do a 14-day trial, but it doesn't require a credit card, so it just switch you to the regular free option after, and the regular free option will work just fine for what we're doing and for a lot more actually. Once we're here, what we want to do is we want the email subscription. So I was playing around with this a little bit earlier just to know exactly where to go. And I found that under audience, there was subscribe forms. And in here you can create the subscribe forms for email subscriptions. So you can go to create new form. And then this could be Samir's newsletter for infra updates. And then here's the underneath text, so get weekly infra updates. And then that does that. And then you can go to save changes. And once you saved it, I'm not sure what that's about. Seems to have worked either way because it says get embedded code, but I'm not sure what the error was about there. But let's see if it still works. We'll go through. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and troubleshoot. So the get embedded code is the part that Claude Code wants, so it can replace the placeholder right now. And so this is the embedded code. So we're just going to copy this, and then we're going to head back to Claude Code and give it the embedded code. Okay, copy. Okay, got the embedded code, and then I'm just gonna paste it. Okay, and let's see what happens. Okay, so it wants to add the embedded code where the placeholder was before, and so it's just asking for permission, so I'm gonna say allow once. And it wants to make another edit, so part of the embedded code changes. I'm gonna replacing the placeholder as well, so allow once. And now it wants to remove the placeholder JS handler because Beehiiv owns it. So it's updating something in the script.js, and that looks good because now that's all done by Beehiiv, so we allow that. And now it's just doing some styling, so we'll take it. We'll take the styling. Okay, now it's telling us to open up index.html in our browser, and we can scroll down to stay in the loop section, and we can see the subscribe, and we can try it out. Even before we deploy, it should work. So let's head back to index.html. So I'm gonna open that in the browser, and we're here. And if we go all the way down, it seems like it refused the connection. So that is probably because we're local. I'm not actually 100% sure. I'm gonna ask Claude Code about this, see what the issue may be. So I'm getting So I'm asking it why I'm getting the refused connection to see if Claude Code knows what's going on. I'm actually not 100% sure on how that works. I'm assuming it's because it's running locally and it doesn't want to allow the connection there, but let's see. Okay, so yeah, it's what I thought. I'm not sure what it wants to do here, so let me just read that slowly. But essentially it's saying because of the file protocol, the browser will block the origin frames from Beehiiv. It can't connect to Beehiiv essentially, and it wants to do something with the launch JSON. I actually not know. It just looks like maybe to bypass it when you're running locally. You can try it, see what happens, but then we can ask it more about it. Oh, it wants to spin up a quick local server. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just actually gonna deploy it just to not mess with that right now. And then we will see if it works when we deploy it. It should, according to Claude Code, but I don't really want to run a local server right now just to test this out. So I'm going to deny that. I'm going to say, no, it's okay. Don't need to preview it when running locally. Let's remove the launch. Yeah, let's remove the launch JSON file. And we will just test it out when we deploy to Vercel. Yeah, so it wanted to do kind of a bit of a workaround so that we could test it locally with the subscription, because that's blocked right now because of some cross-origin stuff. But I don't really think that's necessary, so we'll just test it out when we actually deploy it, that the subscription works. So we'll allow the removal of that, and then after it does that, we will move on to deploy it. So yeah, so it tried to do a workaround so that we could see the subscription when we were running the landing page locally. I felt like it was a bit too much to do right now, and there was no need, because deploying it's going to be pretty quick as well, so we can just test it live. And if it doesn't work there, then we can come and troubleshoot, but there's no point in spinning up a local server just so we could test the email subscription locally. Okay, so now that we are done the email subscription, right now it's not fully working because it's running locally. It doesn't like the protocol, so there's no connection, but it should once we actually deploy it. So let's move on to the final step, and that's deploying it. All right, ready to move on to deploying it. What do I need to do next? All right, so I'm ready to move on, and I'm asking Claude Code, what do I need to do next to deploy? So it wants to write the Vercel JSON. All right, let's allow it. That's probably needed. So right now it's just adding some files that it deems necessary for Vercel to work. So we're just gonna allow it, and then we're gonna try it out, see how it works. This here is a git ignore, which is more version control stuff. We'll allow it, doesn't hurt. Okay, so here it wants to check the GitHub installation if it's running locally. It wants me to allow it to run some git and GitHub commands, which is some version control commands, because what I believe Vercel will want to do is connect to GitHub or some version control tool in order to deploy our landing page. But I'm gonna tell Claude that I'm actually gonna do the uploading to GitHub myself. So I'm not gonna allow it to do it for me. And the reason for this is because I wanna show you the full process in case you do not have Git on your machine, and I'll show you how to do it directly to the GitHub GUI, because you can make a GitHub account for free, and from there you can upload the files yourself, so you don't have to worry about the GitHub setup from local to the GitHub GUI. It will just make things a little easier if you don't have Git. So I'm gonna deny it here, and then I'm gonna show you how we can go about uploading it to GitHub manually without needing to set up Git on our local machine. So I'm just telling it I'm actually gonna upload this myself to GitHub. You can just guide me through the steps. Okay, so for the steps that it's given us for deploying it, it's telling us that it wants us to create a Git repository locally and then create a GitHub repo, and it wants us to name it something like this. This is on the GitHub web interface, and then it wants us to push it locally to the GitHub repo and then deploy it by importing it directly. I'm gonna do this differently so that we don't have to worry about the local setup of Git. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna head directly to the GitHub web interface and import our files directly to there. So we'll head over to the web browser. We'll go to GitHub. Now, I already have an account, but you can create a GitHub account completely free. It's like signing up for any account online, just your email, and that should do it, a password, and you should have one. And then once you have your account created, you can head over to repositories. You can create a new repository, and you can name it really whatever you want. I'm gonna name this landing page Samir, and this just checks if the name is available, because you can't have conflicting repository names. This can just be a description, landing page Samir, and this is the visibility. This essentially means, will people be able to view this repository, or will only you be able to view it? I'm gonna make it public just so I can link it for y'all on the description below, but you can keep it private. Either way works. The other part I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a README, and that is pretty much it. And then I'm gonna say create repository. Once the repository is created, I wanna upload my landing page files to it. The easiest way to do that, if you don't want to connect anything locally, is to use the web browser code editor, which GitHub provides, and you can access that by going to .dev. When you go to .dev, simply from .com to .dev, it opens up this web browser code editor for you, and you can simply drag your files directly into here. So you open up your file system, grab all the files from the landing page, and you just drop them directly in there, and they'll all be here. And so once they're there, you just need to save them to the repository. And to do that, you just click on the source control tree here, and you say adding landing page code, and you commit and push, and that's essentially saving it. And then you can go back to the main web interface by going to .com, and you'll see the files that are there. Okay, so now that we have our landing page files in the repository, we need to go to Vercel and deploy it. So let's go back and look at the instructions really quickly. So deploy on Vercel, we go to vercel.com. We need to sign into GitHub if we're not yet signed in, so that it has access to GitHub. And then we want a new project, and then we just import our repo, and then leave all settings as default. Okay, so let's give that a try. So we go to Vercel, If you don't have an account yet, it's completely free to create one, and the free one will do just fine. So just create one, and then once you're in your account, you'll want to go to add projects, and then in here you'll want to import the repo that you just created. There is a way to give it access to our repos. I like to give it access just to the repos it needs. So I go to adjust permissions, and then here you can say all repositories, or you can choose the repos that you wanted to have access to. If you choose all repositories, they will all be there. But if you're just selecting per repository, you have to do it each time you want to give it access to a new repository. So in this case, we want to give it access to the one we just created, landing page Samir. So that's this one. We just created that one. We will then save. And so landing page Samir added just now. We will want to then say import, because I believe that is what Claude Code said to do. Yeah, find import. Okay, so make sure it's the correct one. Landing page Samir, import. And here it did tell us to leave everything default, if I'm not mistaken. Leave all settings as default because it auto detects the HTML, and then just click deploy. Alright, so we're going to leave everything as default, and we're going to click deploy, and then we're going to see what happens. Let's go for it. So now it's going to do its thing, and we're going to see. So here it gives you sort of a description of what it's doing, and you have deployed your project. Doesn't look very nice here, so maybe it missed grabbing all the CSS styling stuff, but let's see what happens. Let's continue to dashboard just to double check if it's just the preview here that shows like this, or if that's actually what happened. So let's continue to dashboard, and then we can go to the landing page URL that it gave us. Yeah, so I think it detected all the HTML, but all the styling was left out. I just want to make sure I added the styling to the repository. Yep, I did. So we probably just need to figure out how we ensure that it grabs the styling. So we can ask Claude Code to help us out. So I deployed, but none of the styling got added to the site. So it looks like plain HTML. And let's see what it says. Here it says the issue is that the Vercel JSON that it added is only telling it about the HTML, but it's ignoring the style CSS and the script JS. So Claude Code is going to fix that now. So let's allow it. Okay, so it told us that it made some changes to the Vercel JSON file. Now here's telling us to change it by adding the file with the local commands. Now we skipped that part. We just went directly to the GitHub web browser. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to do the same again. This is the part that makes things a little slower if you're going directly to the web browser, but for this case it's not too bad. So we're just going to head back to the GitHub web browser and just update the Vercel JSON with the new format. So we head here, we switch this back up to .dev, and this is the Vercel JSON. So I think it's saying it removed these, but let's see. We can open up our file system, and we'll just drag and drop this one. It says an older version exists already. That's okay. Let's replace it. And then we could actually head over to here. We can actually take a look. So you can see that what Claude Code did was it just removed this builds part. By clicking here, it tells you the changes. So let's try that out. Let's just see what Claude Code said. Vercel will pick up the push and redeploy in 30 seconds. So it should pick it up automatically as soon as we change it. So we just say update Vercel JSON, save it, go back to the main interface by switching this to .com, and let's just double check that. So now that's changed, and it seems like this should pick it up automatically after 30 seconds or so. Okay, so after a bit of waiting, Vercel did pick up the change. I did a bit of refreshing, and then eventually it picked up the change. So the CSS styling is all there now, and it looks a lot nicer. So if I go to the landing page site, it should look as we saw it when we ran it locally, and it is live, and so that's all great. Now let's go see if the subscription newsletter stuff works, and it does. That's perfect. And let's test this out. Let's use an email I have. All right, so I have this email called codewithsamirmarin@gmail.com. I'm gonna subscribe, and I'm gonna see if that works. So in theory, that email should now be in our Beehiiv subscription. So we go back to Beehiiv, and we check our audience subscribers. Yep, here it is. codewithsamir@gmail.com. We just subscribed just now at 7:43 a.m. and March 6th. So that is working great, and our site is live. Let's check a few more things. See if we can view the resume. Cool. It opens up the resume for us. This is the resume we used to build the site, and that is looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Obviously, there's some things you can touch up. The Beehiiv email newsletter is not set up fully yet. There are probably settings you can do so that when someone subscribes, they get a welcome email, but the subscription is working. If someone subscribes, they'll get added to your email list, and the site is live, and it looks pretty nice, a lot like it looked when we looked at it locally. And you can always go back to Claude Code and ask it to change different things, and as you can see, as soon as you update the code on the GitHub repository, Vercel picks it up within 30 seconds or so and makes it live. So pretty cool. You can use Claude Code to build out a landing page using your resume, and if you run into any hiccups along the way, you can always rely on Claude Code to help you get through them, as we did a few times here. But the biggest takeaway from this is not so much here's a tutorial you can follow step by step on how to build out a landing page using Claude Code. This is more about here's the process you can use to build out software with Claude Code. And that process is really, here's what I want to do, and you spell that out to Claude Code, and then you say, how would I go about doing this? Could you give me a plan? And once it gives you that plan, you can then ask questions about the plan, make sure you understand the plan, and then go step by step on the plan. You do step 1, and then you check in with Claude Code, make sure you're where you want to be. Step 2, step 3, step 4, up to the final step. And if you make sure to do each part individually, making it a lot easier to get to your final goal, because you're keeping everything contained, and you can fix the errors in one step before moving on to the next step. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed my content and you want to watch more of my content, you can find that over here, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.